name's Michelle with the Book Dragon, and here today we've got author Helen Garraway to answer some questions during her book tour week. Welcome, Helen.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's so exciting.
It's an absolute pleasure. And as you can see, we've got a guest appearance here. If you'd like to introduce him, Helen.
Yeah, this is Alfie. This is my cat Alfie. He's my writing companion, and he was the inspiration of the Arafels, if anybody's read any of my Sentinel
Oh,
series.
wow.
He has this sleeping dragon pose where he lays flat on the floor with his elbows out, and he just made me think of this sort of cross between a cat and a dragon, which is where the Arafel came from. And of course, the name came from his name as well. I took his name and played with the letters.
Oh, so we've
So
got a celebrity
he's famous.
cast. That's an
Yeah, so he's famous.
perfect about the position, since it's the Book Dragon as well. So
Exactly. Yes,
all
yeah.
on brand and theme. Well,
Excellent.
it's great to have you both with us. So could you tell us, Helen, what inspired you to write the Sentinels series?
Yeah, I never really expected to ever be a writer. I was always a great reader, and fantasy was my greatest love. I always read a lot of fantasy, and there was a time in my life, about 10 years ago, where everything changed, and I suddenly had an empty house, and my daughter went off to university, and I started putting pen to paper. I had time on my hands, so I filled it with writing, and it was like this creative dam had sort of breached, and off I went. And the idea of the Sentinel series itself came from somewhere I used to walk with my local area. There's some really ancient forests, and I was walking through the forest. And when as a writer, you go through it and you think, what if, what if, what if? And it's like, what if the trees could talk, because they're so old and so ancient. What tales they could tell. And then that sort of went on. What if somebody was inside the tree? And then that became, what if somebody was inside the tree and they were awoken at a time of need, and they have been sleeping for a long period of time, and then they come back out at a time of need to help protect the world that they live in. And that was sort of the germ of the idea for the Sentinels, and that's when I started writing. And I wrote 6 books flat out, just one after another, a whole series. And I've just been gradually then, since 2016, when I sort of started writing it, I've been gradually editing and deciding what to do with them. And I got fed up with reading them on my laptop, and I thought, why don't I publish them? I enjoyed them. I wrote what I liked to read, so I thought, well, let's publish them and see what happens. And so I then went off to investigate how to publish a book, and whether traditional publishing or self-publishing, and I chose self-publishing, and here we are 5 books later.
Yeah, so the creativity really was awakened in you.
It was, yeah, they just flowed, and I just kept going. So, and now, as I say, I've got one more book to edit and publish in the main series. Yeah, it keeps me busy, which is fun.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And I was wondering, who's your favorite character to write for in the series and why?
Yeah, it's really difficult. When I first started writing, Gerald, he's the main character. He's the King's Ranger who becomes the ladies' captain, who wakes all the Sentinels in the first book. And obviously he was my first idea, and he was the one that I was expecting to go on this quest, on this journey to try and save the world. And so he was always fun to write. But as I was writing the book, obviously the Sentinel characters came into the story. So the Sentinels are the ladies' personal guards. They're the ones that have been sleeping in the trees that were named after them. So they're the Sentinels' personal guards, and the Sentinel trees are the tall trees that they slept in. And as they're awoken, we get to meet all of the different Sentinels. And Valerian is the first Sentinel that I woke. But originally it was right towards the end of the book. And then I got to this point and I thought, well, it's called Sentinels Awaken, and I'm not waking a Sentinel till the end of the book. So I had to bring it right back to the very beginning. I said, well, I need a Sentinel awake at the beginning. And I moved the character Valerian to the beginning of the book. So then his whole character arc then began to be created, a lot earlier in the story. So there was a lot more to him than I originally intended. And I think he actually has become my favorite character, just because he's got so many layers. There's so many secrets, there's so many things he's hiding, and then we find out more and more about him as the series goes on. So yeah, and Sentinel Spanish, he's finally in the spotlight. He's always been in the shadows helping other people, but in Sentinel Spanish we really get to see him up front and center at last.
Well, it sounds like something to look forward to.
Yeah, so I must admit, if folks get into the series, they tend to read them all. It's like, I wouldn't say that I'm a slow writer or even a slow publisher. I mean, I've got 6 books in like under 3 years, and people are telling me the wait is a killer, and I'm thinking, I can't go much faster. It's like 2 books a year is more than enough.
Oh, and
But
it's great if people are wanting more and demanding
it is. It means I'm doing something right. So if they want my books, that's a good thing.
Definitely. So the series has 6 books in it so far, and I know it's not yet complete. So do you
Yeah.
have a set stopping point you've decided on, or do you plan to keep writing while the inspiration is there?
I've got one more book that I've already written that I've got to edit that was in the
Mhm.
original 6 books. Obviously, the novella that I wrote, Sentinels Recovery, which was 3.5, I wrote that extra. I couldn't fit it into the storyline, so I wrote it
And
as a
that's the
separate
one that's
novella.
available for free on your website. Yeah.
No, the Sentinels Recovery is actually a novella. It's number 3.5, which
Right.
is in the
Oh,
series.
right. Yes, of course.
The
Yeah.
Sentinels Stirring is the one that's free if you
Yes,
sign up to my
that's it.
newsletter
Hmm.
via my website, and then you can download that for free. Sentinels Banished is the 5th one, and then there'll be one more, book 6, that I need to finish off, and then it'll be the editing for book 6. And then I've got a prequel, but I'm going to break it into 2 parts because it's getting too long. So there'll be a part 1 and a part 2 of the prequel. So there's 3 more books
Yeah.
to come in this series. But there is still the possibility of doing a spin-off series and carrying on with some of the characters. And I have so many ideas for side stories because the characters are all so rich and so interesting that there is so much more yet to write about the characters that are in the series. So although I may finish the series at 6, there'll still be more to write, I think.
So there's a lot more potential in the actual world.
Yeah, and I just love
Yeah.
writing the characters in the world. I just don't want to leave it. You don't want to leave that world, you know.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. It's obvious how much passion you have for it. And you also have the Soul Mist series. So can you tell us some more about that?
So the Soul Mist series it was published in October of 2022 as part of the Realm of Darkness anthology. So I got involved in an anthology just for the experience and to meet other authors and to get, a new understanding of other things that you can do to market and how to work with other people to get your books out. And that was quite an experience and great fun. And it was a list aiming set. So we were aiming for the USA Today bestselling list, which we did hit. We hit at number 110, which was really exciting. And Soul Breather was my contribution, the first book in the Soul Mist series, which is a fantasy romance. And it's now available individually because the anthology has now been delisted. So you can now get Soul Breather standalone. And that's the first book. And it's about a fallen angel who is rescued by a mortal who has a skill, which is an ability to soul breathe, though she doesn't really understand what that is or how to do it. And it's their journey of discovery of her trying to save her brother and him trying to figure out how he fell in the first place and how he can restore his name. And it's how they go on that journey together to try and discover who is actually trying to bring him down. So yes, but that's more of a romance fantasy. Has a more of a those two have more of a stronger romantic line than in the Sentinel series, which is epic fantasy and is really more about the quest and the relationships really evolve as part of the story rather than it driving the story. So it's slightly different. And so that was the first book, and that's out now. And I'm working on the second book, Dragonbound, book 2 of the Soul Mist, which is going to the editor next month. So that's written and it's off to the editor soon. So that will be coming in the summer, hopefully.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes.
So lots of exciting things ahead.
Oh, there's so much going on.
So do you have any upcoming events or other news that you'd like to share with us?
Well, obviously Sentinels Banished is the newest, is the great and new launch, which is really exciting. And then I do have the first 2 books are currently in audio. Sentinels Awaken and Sentinels Rising are also available in audio, and Sentinels Justice is currently being recorded. So that should be finished come April, fingers crossed. That's the aim anyway, to get that one out late March, April probably, depending on Audible's timelines. So that's cool. And then obviously I have a newsletter that folks can sign up to and get the free download of Sentinels Stirring, though it is available for sale as well, but because people kept asking me for a printed copy, so I did in the end publish it as a printed copy, but the ebook is free with the newsletter. And I have a Patreon if folks want to follow my work there.
Yeah, feel free to give it a plug.
Yes, indeed. And then I'm also actually an ambassador for Ally, which is the Alliance of Independent Authors. So I sort of help other authors, other independent authors also around. You know, I do book reviews for indie authors and I do author interviews on my website. So I try to give back to other authors, as you know, the community is so strong when we help each other. So I try and help other indie authors, and if anybody has any questions or how to self-publish, I'm more than happy to be a sounding board and to help as well. So that's there as well. So those are probably the key things that are going on. As I say, there's so much going on. It's keeping up with it all sometimes.
A lot's happening and lots to look forward to there, Helen.
Yeah.
And Helen will be with us live at the Book Dragon at 6 West Row, Stockton-on-Tees tomorrow between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. And you'll be able to pick up signed copies of her books and get to have a chat with her in person.
Oh, it should be such fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. It's been an absolute pleasure to interview you today, Helen. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's great opportunity. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.